Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Blissfully Bloom. In today's episode, I have a guest come on the show, and her name is Hallie Avolio. We are going to talk about all things affirmations, journaling, and how to be in the energy of love. Hallie Avolio is not a typical anything. That includes woman, mother, friend, entrepreneur, or coach. Hallie is an affirmation queen, a lover of core values, and is obsessed with empowering humans to create a life they love that is sassy as F. Through her manifestation and self-love coaching, Hallie utilizes many modalities to help people connect to their greater purpose and their highest self. She loves to help you get unstuck, find self-love, manifest your purpose, and live this life to the fullest. She is the founder and president of Sassy Healthy Fit, an organization created with the mission to teach as many humans as possible to love themselves unconditionally and create a yes life, and to make this world a brighter place through each of our unique gifts. I'm so excited for y'all to hear our conversation today. Before you do, if you haven't gotten a chance to, make sure to rate and leave a rating for the podcast to help it grow and reach more listeners. But without further ado, let's get straight into the episode. Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to Blissfully Bloom. I'm Victoria LeBlanc, a self-love and soulful coach, and I'm your host. The intention of this podcast is to guide women to fall in love with themselves, embody confidence, and drop the stories of not good enough. Your soul will awaken to the truth that you have always been worthy. In this remembering, you no longer wait for permission, validation, or acceptance. You choose yourself, and you become a woman who blissfully blooms like a rose, showing the world your authentic self, talents, and gifts because it's your birthright. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Blissfully Bloom. I want to welcome my very first guest in a very long time, Hallie Avolio. Welcome, Hallie.
Hi, Victoria. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be your first guest in a long time. That's exciting.
Yeah, I took a little podcast break during the winter and had a little podcast hibernation, but I'm back in full swing with guests. So I'm really excited to have you on the show and speak about self-love and self-growth. My first question for you is, what is one powerful lesson you have learned that has changed your life?
Hmm, that's a good question. All right, I'm going to take a moment here and let that land with me. Okay, I'm going to go with this. Literally came up yesterday while I was washing the dishes, and I said this to my husband. I said, the thing that I kind of missed out on in my life, in my early years, my teen years, certainly in my 20s and my 30s, I'm 43 now, is I did all the things I was doing. And I had a lot of success and a lot of accomplishments, but I was so busy doing the things that I wasn't noticing what was going on. I wasn't energetically connected. I wasn't invested in the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And to tie that into a lesson, I wasn't sitting in gratitude. Not that I wasn't appreciative or grateful, but I wasn't in the energy of gratitude. So for
Mm.
me, that's the biggest lesson and something that's been a really radical shift in my own life journey in the last, I don't know, maybe 6 years or so, is that I'm really taking notice of what's going on in my life. What are the moments? And really honoring the gratitude, because that's such an anchoring energy, especially when it comes to loving yourself, loving the moment, being present, finding joy. When you can anchor into gratitude, it shifts your entire perspective. And I think about all those years where I just kind of let everything like zoom by. And it was
Mm.
always, what's the next thing? Or if something ended, oh, I'm so sad this is over and now it's never going to happen again. Right. But I wasn't really absorbing and being in that essence of the gratitude. So That's my biggest so far, my biggest like life lesson takeaway is the more that I can anchor into gratitude, the more that I really feel whole and complete and really feel that sense of love in the
Mm.
moment.
I love that. I really do. And I think that's something that we often forget, but it's just right at our fingertips and we can use at any point in time. There's
Right?
no money that we need, there's nothing that we need to earn or prove. Like we can really practice gratitude whenever. And it almost reminds me of going to work this morning and noticing this family of birds in the tree that were right next to my car. I feel like they might have been out there for a while or like every time I go to work. But then this time around, I really stopped for a few moments to really notice the beautiful sounds that they were
Mm,
creating, just enjoying their presence and feel deep appreciation. It can just shift your whole view of life.
right. Have you read any works by Eckhart Tolle?
No.
So his two most, I guess, famous or popular books are The Power of Now and A New Earth. My personal favorite of the two is A New Earth, but he talks so much about anchoring into this present moment. So exactly what you're talking about. When you were looking at that family of birds, yes, you were on your way to work. I'm sure you had other things on your mind, what you had to do, what was on your task list, even things like getting in the car, finding your keys, turning on the ignition, right? And so doing all
Mm-hmm.
these tasks that even though they're mundane, right, they occupy brain space. And depending on how triggering something can be, certainly when it takes up brain space, it can also take up emotional space and trigger parts of your body that he refers to as the
Mm-hmm.
pain body, especially if it's something that, brings up a subconscious experience or something that caused trauma from the past. But he says if you can come to the present moment and be in this moment, in the present moment, which is all we have, right? We are not the
Mm-hmm.
past. We don't know the future. All we have is the present moment. And if we can sit in that energy of the present moment and really hold it for what it is, then we are abundant. Then we are able to really bring forth this ultimate power and this limitless potentiality. So that's
Mm-hmm.
magical what you just shared. And it's so often, I think, that we're so busy, especially in
Mm-hmm.
today's world of, instant gratification and why didn't they text me back 3 seconds later, right? We
Uh-huh.
forget to just pause we forget to just
Mm-hmm.
take in the moment because really the moment is what it's about. And when
Yeah.
we can really appreciate it, that's when that's when the abundance starts to flow. In my work, I'm really working with people to help them tap into manifestation, tap into finding joy, tap into being happy where they are. And if
Mm-hmm.
you don't pause, right? If you don't take gratitude in that space, then and you're constantly grasping for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, you're never going to be satisfied or happy.
Mm. It's like, when will you be? If you
Exactly.
set it, oh, I'll be happy when I make this much money, but
Yep.
then you feel, oh, but I can make even more, then you set a next destination for your happiness. Like your happiness is always going to be pushed further and further back.
Exactly. And then the question is, well, then what's the point of having goals, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if you're always going to have like a goal and then you achieve it and then it's not going to be enough, but if you can take the goals as kind of almost on a separate plane and say I am enough as I am, as I am now in this moment. I am enough, I have enough, I feel enough. I'm
Mm-hmm.
grateful for this moment. And you can hold space for those goals, those dreams, those big visions, because that's the fun, right? Like that's the magic, that's the fun stuff. But then they just come to you so much more easily when you release that attachment to the outcome. So that's where I think, the magic happens. It's not, oh, well, when I have $10,000 in my bank account, then I'm going to magically be happy. It's I'm happy right
Yeah.
now and I'm doing the things that I want to do to attract the $10,000 into my bank account. When that's there, yeah, I will still be happy. And if
Mm-hmm.
it grows to 100,000 or a million or whatever it grows to, I will still be happy at every step of the way because my happiness is not tied or contingent upon that outcome.
Yeah. I think that's something that I personally struggle with is really attaching my worth to the external. And I'm just curious, what would you advise to somebody who tends to find themselves in the same patterns of attaching their worth? Maybe just searching for love on the outside of themselves or really wanting that external validation from somebody else instead of validating themselves.
I mean, isn't that's kind of the $1 million question, right? Is how do we find that worthiness, right? Because worthiness and love are very closely connected. I have a course called Ignite, and the module that I taught, it was actually last week at the time of this recording. So the first module in that course is called The Energetics of Worthiness. And the reason I
Mm-hmm.
start with that module is because it's foundational, right? If we can understand this one principle that I'm going to share, but if when we understand it and we hold it to be true, we can hold that love for ourselves, right? And that's how we attract more love into our lives. And we don't have to seek external validation. So the principle is I am worthy because I am.
Mm-hmm.
I was born worthy and I will always be worthy. There is no condition, right, that makes us more worthy. Doesn't matter what it is. We were born worthy and we are always worthy. I also believe that that applies to self love, as in,
Mm-hmm.
we always have love for ourselves, but it's a bit different with love or self love in particular, in that I believe we are born loving ourselves and we are born with this beautiful, unapologetic, unconditional love for self. And I mean, it's evident in a baby, right? You think about it like a baby looking in a mirror, right? And they're just cooing and oohing and eyeing, and they're like, oh my God, that's so cute, right? And they're laughing, and they have that beautiful big smile on their face, right? And babies, they don't know different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But something inevitably happens to us as humans between, probably between like 1 and 5, or sometime in those really formative years, that we begin to question that love of self, right? We begin to question our worthiness. And so there's your external validation. So from a very young age, we're told that, you know, no, because we're told no, or we're told you can't do that or you can't have that. And so we start to associate and tie in our love, our self love, and our self worth into this external validation. We get praise from the outside, and oh, okay, well, that's how I should feel good about myself, is when I get praise from mommy, daddy, brother, sister, whomever, right? And it's not
Mm-hmm.
a bad thing, it's just part of the journey. And I believe that our human journey, which is so beautiful, is that it's coming back to that full circle moment where throughout our lifetime, our existence, as we become more consciously aware and connected to our soul, we come back to that place of that unconditional love for ourselves so that we can stop seeking that external validation. And I struggle with it too. This morning, even this afternoon, today I was having one of those days. I was just kind of like in my head, kind of off, just, I don't know. It,
Mm.
it was just one of the, bleh. I don't know how else to say that in a word. And I had to keep reminding myself, look at all the things that you do that give yourself evidence that you take care of yourself. So, but this morning when I woke up, I chose to meditate. I hadn't meditated in the morning in a little while, in a few weeks, and I was missing it. So I chose to do that. I also chose to journal, and that's one of my favorite practices. It just really helps me connect to my soul. I also chose to take an early morning walk, and my 9-year-old son asked if he could come with me. And
Aw.
I wanted to say no because I thought I needed some time by myself. And then I said yes because I thought, this is pretty special that he's up early enough and wants to go on the walk with me. I'm going to say yes to him. So we went with me and we had a nice walk, and he held my hand most of the time. And we looked at the moon up above that was still so bright. And we saw this
Oh.
cat sitting on a fence, and he pointed it out to me. He's like, look at that cat. And there were a couple other things that we noticed. And it was just really nice to spend that time together. And even though, because
Mm-hmm.
I was in a bit of a funk, I was a little distracted and I wasn't quite as present on that walk as I maybe wanted to be. But it's
Mm-hmm.
also evidence to myself that I took the time to do it. I listened. I do love myself. So even in those moments where I feel like, oh man, a client backed out of a program and somebody canceled their membership, and I'm feeling like there's rejection out there, and it hurts and it feels bad, but
Mm-hmm.
also I know that really the validation I need comes from within. And I have evidence to show myself that it's happening.
Wow. And I'm curious about your journaling practice that you do.
Yeah.
How does that look like in the morning whenever you choose a journal?
Oh my gosh, I love journaling. Do you like to journal?
I like it, but I just find so much resistance to it for some
Mm.
reason. Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
make excuses for myself, like I don't have time for it, and then I'll push it to the side, but
Sure.
it's on my desk ready for
Right.
me.
I have a pen, but I don't feel like doing it.
Hmm.
You know, I just find so much release in journaling. So I've done it many different ways over the years, and I used to follow kind of a prescription,
Hmm.
start with 5 things you're grateful for, write down 3 words that describe your mood. I would write down like the day of my cycle. I mean, I've done all sorts of things, like very formulaic in terms of the journaling practice. And I did that
Hmm.
for a long time. That helped me to having some structure from the beginning, kind of helped me get started because if I didn't have anything to say, so to speak of, at least I did that. At least I wrote
Hmm.
down the day of my cycle. I wrote down the things I was grateful for. But what I found for myself is that that structure kind of limited my intuitive flow. And so I know we talked
Mm.
about this before we were recording, just, really listening and leaning into your intuition. So what I started doing is just, I made a commitment to myself last summer and I said, I'm going to journal every day, even if it's like one sentence. Well, I wrote this morning was my 177th journal entry in a row, but I will admit there were a couple days. There's maybe like 3 days in there where I skipped because I don't know, life happens. I don't even know why. But that's still
Hmm.
pretty damn good, right?
Angel
So
number I spotted too.
yeah. So my 2 things that I always start with are the date, and then I've been
Hmm.
numbering the journal entries. And for some reason that like motivates me just doing that. Because
Wow.
sometimes I'll even just write like, I don't have anything to say. But here I am, love me. That's kind of it. But this morning, my journaling was I wrote a letter to myself, and I said it was one of those good morning self. It's time to get honest with us. Let's go.
I love that. Like a deep introspection
Yeah, yeah,
time or just
exactly.
reflection. And then do you suggest journaling right when you get out of bed? Because I've heard in another podcast that you're in this in between dream and wakefulness state. And I guess to find more of an intuitive flow and you don't have to really think much about journaling, then you'll just kind of be in that state. Or as you go and journal whenever you want.
I mean, I personally journal wherever I want, but just to speak to that, because it is true. So your brain is in what's called theta state when you first wake up. So when you're coming out
Mm-hmm.
of sleep and you're in this theta brainwave state, the benefit of that time of day is that the veil between the subconscious and the conscious mind is the thinnest. So if you can imagine, when you're coming out of sleep and maybe you've just kind of finished a dream and you can like kind of almost taste the dream still, right? You can kind of see it, you can kind of taste it, you can kind of still experience it. And
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, right, where you're thinking about it and then you start to wake up and then your mind goes like more alert and you start to maybe think about what you have going on that day, or maybe you start to do the things that you need to do to get ready in the morning. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe even 30 minutes later, you're like, what was that dream I had? I don't remember, right? You've had that happen, I'm sure,
Oh,
right?
yes.
So it's because that veil has closed. It's like or the gap has widened rather between the subconscious and the conscious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you don't really lose it. It's just goes back into your subconscious. And so you don't consciously remember what the dream was. So I actually prefer to meditate in theta
Mm-hmm.
personally versus journaling, but either one would work. It's also a really great time if you are somebody that likes to speak to the universe or to spirit guides. It's a really good time to do that because, again, you're in that really malleable time when your energy, your flow, you're not inhibited by the, oh, I should do this or I need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You're just in your essence of being. And so the time right when you wake is a really powerful time. So I personally journal usually a little bit later as part of my morning ritual. If I do a morning time, I usually do it then. But I also really, really love to journal before bed. I actually, if I was going to give your
Ooh.
audience a kind of a pro tip, I think that journaling before bed is actually a more potent time because you're setting yourself up for this next subconscious dreamland sort of space
Mm-hmm.
where you begin to reprogram. And that's when you can start to attract and really call in what you're manifesting into your life, right? And so
Ooh.
one of the practices that I've been doing recently in my journal is I've been writing a little, and you could say dear universe, you could say dear intuition, you could say dear God, whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever word, right? But I'll say
Mm-hmm.
something like, dear universe, as I sleep tonight, please help me reprogram the thought, blah, 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 blah. Or please help me really become an energetic match to attract new clients into my business with ease. Please help me really heal a lot of the wounds I have around self confidence and self love. Please help me be energetically aligned with the wealth
Mm.
that I know I am ready to hold. Right. So I'll write
Yeah.
something like that in addition to any other gratitudes and just general ramblings that I might want to put into my journal. And that's been a really both a fun practice, and also it makes me feel really aligned with my heart space, and it just makes me feel good. Just makes me feel
Yeah.
good.
Well, sometimes that's all that counts, right? If it
Exactly. That's
makes you
all you
feel
need.
good,
If it
follow
feels
it.
good, do it. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. I mean, that's very easy.
I'll definitely have to try that. Maybe just switch up the times
Yeah,
because I feel
see?
like the resistance tends to come in the morning time.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe just switching things around. And I was working with this business coach just about a few months ago, and I was so structured in my morning and evening routines that I
Mm-hmm.
didn't give myself any wiggle room to do. It had to be in a certain order, it had to be
Yep.
those certain things. And she was like, maybe that's creating resistance or just feeling like it's a chore. That feeling is rippling into different areas of your life because you're feeling this way in this area too. And the same with, like, I felt this way with my podcast, I felt this way with my business. And once I started to change that, I think it made a huge difference. So
What did you discover from a resistance perspective? How did you release that for yourself?
like you said in the beginning of the doing and forgetting about the being in it
Mm-hmm.
all, I think I was really, really attaching myself to the masculine energy
Mm-hmm.
and forgetting about my feminine energy and allowing
Mm-hmm.
her to express herself. That was the resistance there, that I was just so focused on getting things done, accomplishing all of the structure, all of the to-do lists, and even with the evening and morning routine, picturing them as to-do lists, not
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
like a ritual and something that is sacred. So when I switched my mindset around that, I was really able to open myself up to just receiving more instead of always being in this go mode all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I love to look at resistance as just a really beautiful space to be curious. And I know you used that word
Mm-hmm.
before, when we can be curious about why we feel resistant to anything, whether it's journaling or routine or any part of our life, right? It's really eye-opening if we can explore it a little bit and ask the question of ourselves and say,
Mm-hmm.
why am I feeling resistance to this? Is this triggering? Is this some trauma related issue?
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that I need to work through? Is it something that I just need to give myself some grace and compassion? How can I really be curious about what's going on instead of judging myself for having that resistance? Because the resistance is so telling of what we actually need in our life.
Yeah, yeah. Even though it could feel icky, it could be frustrating, but eye-opening all at once.
Oh, for sure. I mean, resistance is very uncomfortable. I mean, I hate
Mm-hmm.
feeling resistance because if I feel resistant, then I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin, and like I can't we don't want to be out of the comfort zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're out of the comfort zone, our brain kind of freaks out. Our lizard brain says, go back to safety. And
Mm-hmm.
our body, our nervous system dysregulates, right? So that's when we have to bring in our tools like meditation or breathing or using movement to help really anchor back into our bodies. But then we can see the
Mm-hmm.
resistance as a signal, a signal from ourself, from our higher self saying, hey, you need to pay attention to this. Don't ignore it. Don't push it down. Don't shove it away. Don't pretend it doesn't exist. Don't judge it, but
Mm-hmm.
just honor it, observe it, notice it, and then ask yourself, what do I need right now? Do I need to grow in some way? Do I need to get some help in some way? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to offload something? Do I need to
Yeah.
nourish and nurture myself in a way that I hadn't considered before.
It's like a knock at the door. Please listen.
Exactly. I love that. That's perfect. Yeah.
So you call yourself the affirmation queen. So can you dive into that and how you use affirmations to up level your life?
Yeah. I mean, I love affirmations. Do you like to use affirmations?
I do. I have a list and a paper ready to go.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, for me, affirmations is just it's a really great modality. And just to clarify, an affirmation itself is not the be all end all, but the affirmation is the vehicle to get you to up level, to get you to that space of, wow, I feel like I'm really aligned with who I want to be. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, when I started really making a shift in my life and realizing that I was tired of always doing for everyone else and always letting life happen to me instead of for me, I realized that I had to do some pretty radical mindset shifting. And for me, affirmations was that way to come back to myself, to remind myself that I am enough, that I am worthy, that I can do whatever it is I set my mind out to do, that I am unstoppable, right? All of these things. But I realize that it's not just about saying the words, it's that I really have to believe it. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I'm coaching, that's something that I'm constantly reminding my clients is, look, it's not just saying the word. You could repeat after me all day long. I mean, we learn to do this in kindergarten, right? Or preschool. We learn how to do repeat after me. Repeat after me
Mm-hmm.
is fine, but repeat after me is not embodying the energy. So you have to play with it and see, okay, what are the words that really resonate, that really land with me? And it has to become part of your being, part of your essence. You know, there's something to be said for creating habit. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a fine line though, because I'm thinking about, the morning and the evening ritual, because I can relate a lot to what you were saying. I used to be, when I first started having a morning routine, I was like very stringent about it. And it
Mm-hmm.
started to feel really confining. And then I too got resistant and I felt like, oh, this is terrible. I don't want to do it anymore. And I felt like I was like trying to bust out of my cage, right? But
Yeah.
I was the one that made the cage. So that seemed contradictory. So there's something to be said for having a sustainable habit and balancing that with something that feels confining. But I
Mm-hmm.
believe that when you can bring affirmations into your life in a beautiful ritual so that it becomes part of your daily existence without you really having to think about it, right? That's when
Yeah.
you truly get to reprogram your subconscious mind to reprogram those old thoughts and old habits and old patterns that no longer serve you. So that's the magic of
Mm.
affirmations.
Wow. That reminds me of a time that I was going into work and something must have triggered me that day to work. But when I was walking into the building, I just noticed myself feeling really down, like already. And then all of a sudden, I was like, you know what? I'm going to uplift myself right now. And I just started repeating a bunch of positive, affirming affirmations to myself. And it just made the world of difference just walking into that door and just being reminded of my truth. Because in that moment of sulking, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not who I really am.
Right.
And so just kind of coming back in alignment with our true selves, I think is a really beautiful thing to do. When we were talking about like the theta brainwave,
Mm-hmm.
do you suggest telling affirmations to yourself in that state?
Yes. Yeah.
Ooh.
It's a great time to use affirmations. So something that you're very familiar with and that you're very, something simple, right? Because you don't want to like be thinking hard because then you're going to take yourself out of it. So for me, some of the ones that I say regularly are things such as I am enough, I am worthy, I am creating my best life, right? I
Mm-hmm.
am aligned with my best timeline. So these are some that I really like that just are ingrained within me at this point. So I will say
Mm-hmm.
them actually as I fall asleep at night, just in my mind with my eyes closed. And then often when I wake up in the morning, because we have lights that come on early.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is great. So my husband set it up so the lights go on earlier before we wake up so that it's more matching our circadian rhythm. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll notice that I begin to come out of like that dream state and I start to become more consciously aware that it's morning time, then before I've even opened my eyes, I'll say affirmations or affirmative phrases to myself. And I find that it really does set the stage for a better day. It's not perfect though. I mean, I still have mornings when I get up and then I have to go, you know, you go into the bathroom, you look in the mirror and you're like, "Oh God, is it another day?" But that's another time when you can say them again. You look in the mirror, and I love what you said before, Victoria, you know, the sulkiness, those negative voices, that's not our truth. That's just
Mm-hmm.
our ego telling lies for self-protection. And if we can remind ourselves, that's not true. That's just a self-protective measure, but we don't need it. And I am a badass. I am awesome. I am
Mm-hmm.
going to crush this day, right? I can do anything I want to do. I can have it all. I mean, whatever words like feel good to you to give yourself that little inner cheerleader pump up, you know, like, yeah, let's do this, right? Like in a pep rally.
Yeah, yeah. And I definitely use them with my students. I tutor math and
Yeah.
oh boy. Those
What age group do you
affirmations,
tutor?
fourth graders.
How do they like that?
Oh, they love it. I ask them to write an affirmation on the top of their board before we get started with a problem so that they can just like look to the corner and just be reminded. It's amazing what it just does to their confidence levels. So,
Oh, for
I mean,
sure.
it says the same for us.
Yeah, 100%. We forget, right? And I love that you're teaching this to 9 and 10-year-olds because we're so malleable when we're little. And then we forget when we get older and we get all this resistance and we get stubborn and we think, "Oh, I know it all. How could this possibly work? This is dumb. This is so stupid. It's so woo-woo, blah, 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 blah." But it has tremendous power. And the thing
Hmm.
is, you know, we have these beautiful supercomputers between our ears, but also they can wreak havoc with our energetic flow. So if we can
Mm.
do those things to stay grounded and aligned, right? So I love that your fourth graders are doing affirmations. What are some that they will write down? Can you think of any?
Oh man, they get really creative with theirs. They'll do a lot of similes,
Okay.
like I am as strong as a car. What they'll do usually is they'll use a simile and they'll compare it to something that they really like and or they really enjoy to kind of like feel connected to whoever or
Right.
whatever that they're trying to embody almost.
Well, you're making a huge difference by bringing that to them at that age.
Oh yeah, I love seeing the difference it makes in them. Yeah, so who is our highest self and when do you feel most connected to your highest self?
Oh, I love that question. Okay, so this is a little controversial, right? Because everyone has a different definition of highest self. So, just as a preface to what I'm about to say, is take it in and take from it what you like and what you don't. You get to decide what it means to you. So,
Hmm.
really, the way that I see our highest self is the version of ourself that is the most authentic and aligned mind, body, spirit.
Hmm.
But kind of the but to that is that our highest self is constantly evolving, just as we are. Highest self seems to imply that there's then a lowest self. And I also want to
Mm.
discern that it's not that there's highest self and lowest self in comparison. It's that highest self is if you were to see yourself in the most aligned version of you, mind, body, spirit, how would she show up in the world? Right. And so we're always evolving and we're always leaning into that and we're always exploring what that looks like. And so part of the journey and I think the fun actually is discovering who that is because
Hmm.
she gets to be this amazing, if you want, goddess, you know, extraordinaire, boss lady, badass, just showing up in this radical, beautiful power, right? Just totally aligned from her core. She has no qualms about who she is. She knows exactly who she is. She is authentic. She is herself. She is unique. She's not comparing. She is just in her zone, in her flow. She knows that what's meant for her is always aligned with her. She's grooving in that space. She's like the woman at the disco, just like getting her groove on in the middle of the dance floor in like the coolest, sparkliest outfit with the high heels and the whole thing, doing her dance and has absolutely no idea that there's anybody else all around her, right? To me,
Mm.
that is your highest self. And for me, when I feel most embodied in that energy, I mean, there's definitely a few things. So for sure, when I'm having like a good hair day, when I'm having a good hair and makeup day, that definitely taps into that version of myself because it just helps me kind of elevate the confidence meter. So when the confidence meter
Mm-hmm.
goes up, I don't know about you, Victoria, but when my confidence meter goes up, I'm like, okay, highest self, you are making your appearance. That just kind of revs me up. But
Mm-hmm.
spiritually, how I connect to my highest self through journaling, through yoga, through walking. I love taking walks and just taking in the sounds. You know, you were talking before about the birds. So I went on a
Mm-hmm.
walk. I teach a class on Mondays. Before I taught the class, I wanted to just get out and stretch a bit and move my body a little bit. And I was walking up my street and there were these two hawks and they were just circling up above. And I live near a bit of a forest. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
common that I'll see hawks. But, you know, hawks are known as messengers if you look at spirit animals and just their sound. I don't know if you are familiar with the sound of the hawks, but it's just this really beautiful, majestic sound. And to hear
Mm-hmm.
them communicating with each other, right? And then they're like circling up above. I mean, it was like wondrous to stand there and just look up in the clear blue sky. It was a cool, crisp day and see these beautiful, majestic creatures communicating and circling and the whole thing. And to me, that was really powerful. I felt really connected spiritually. I felt very grounded from my crown chakra all the way down to my root. I felt very aligned. And so that was definitely kind of a
Ooh.
highest self sort of moment.
Oh, I haven't even thought of the alignment of the chakras and how that plays into our
Mm.
highest self at all. I'm so glad that you brought that up
Oh,
because
cool.
I feel like when I pause and do like a meditation to align the chakras
Yep.
or heal your chakras and do that sort of work, just have this loving presence surrounding me, and like you said, it's like a grounded state of being that you feel. So I love that you interweave that because I've never thought of it like that before.
Cool. Yeah, you know, like I said, everyone is going to have a different experience. And I love that you come to it through the meditation, the healing, which is so beautiful. So the other part of the wonder to me is that we all get to experience this life that we live in the way that feels right to us. As in, there's
Mm-hmm.
no one right way. And I guess that's why I love coaching so much because when I get to coach, and if it's somebody that's another coach or someone in business, an entrepreneur, you know, she's going to have kind of a different set of things that are going to be important to her. If it's somebody that's, you know, just trying to like figure her life out and get her own grounding, or if it's somebody that's, you know, just getting over a divorce or having a big transition in their life, when we get to experience this life through different lenses and we get to open our experiences to be curious about all the
Mm-hmm.
possibilities in front of us, to me that is really powerful. So that's another way that I connect to my highest self. When I'm in a coaching session, I often go into this almost channeled state where
Ooh.
the energy that feeds off the other person that comes out, sometimes I think, wow, who said that, right? But it's cool. So it's just being able to really be in touch with our truth. You said that
Mm-hmm.
before, Victoria. It's truth. I mean, if you have to kind of equate highest self to one word, it would be truth.
Ooh. I really love that. And for somebody who's like wondering, okay, but how do I show up in that sort of energy? What do you suggest that they start to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, first of all, you have to be really open to the possibilities. And if you want to start to show up in that sort of energy, then you have to be willing to do it. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of ways, right? You know, there's many modalities. There's meditation, journaling, yoga, blah, 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 blah. I could tell you all the ways, but it's not about the ways. Here's the
Mm-hmm.
secret is that as soon as you make the declaration that you want to show up in this energy, you have already opened the door. And when you do that, that's when you begin and you will find the ways. And whether you find a mentor to work with, or you discover a YouTube video, or you read a book, or whatever, or you just listen to your heart, whatever the ways are, they will be available to you. The universe will always provide you the ways. But as soon as you
Mm-hmm.
make the declaration and you give yourself that opening, then you've already begun the journey to step into it.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I think that just takes a bit of pressure off
right?
Just
There's no
be
pressure.
open, be
Right.
open, be inviting, be welcoming, and you will start to feel her presence. A word that came to mind was devotion.
Ooh, I love that. Yes. Beautiful. And can we
Voted.
be devoted to ourselves,
Yeah,
right?
because that's who our highest self is ourselves.
Exactly. Exactly. Maybe
Yeah.
that song from Grease, Hopelessly Devoted to You, maybe it should be about ourselves. I'm hopelessly devoted to me.
Yeah. Yes. So, where can listeners connect with you? And is there any sort of offers that you want them to know about at this point in time?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So please do connect with me. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Sassy Healthy Fit. You can also go to my website, which is sassyhealthy.fit. And I would invite you to check out my 21-day affirmation reset challenge. It's an awesome, awesome, awesome way to begin this practice of making your affirmations ritual, becoming the essence of your affirmations. And the reason that it's 21 days is because that is kind of the shortest amount of time that they've shown that a habit will begin to form. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have it forever, but at least getting started with it for 21 days, it gives you a beautiful opportunity to begin to become the essence of you through this journey.
Ooh, well, definitely check her challenge out, and I'll drop all of her links in the show notes so that they will be easy to find. My last question that I have for you is, what does it mean to blissfully bloom?
Oh, I love that. I love the title, by the way. When I first saw that your podcast was called Blissfully Bloom, I was like, oh, I love this so much.
Thank
This is what
you.
comes to me. So I obsess. I love the image of the lotus flower and the lotus flower that
Ooh.
comes out of the mud, right? It's like formed like under the mud. And then when it pushes up out of the mud and it opens up into this gorgeous hot pink bloom. I mean, I know they come in other colors, but I just picture it always being hot pink because that's like my favorite. So it like blooms out of the mud. And I just think blissfully blooming is like owning your truth and just really showing up in this beautiful essence of you and living in bliss, living in joy, living in your own luxury that makes your heart happy.
Mm, Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming on the show today, Holly. It was such a pleasure to have you on and speak about self love and manifestation and journaling today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a wonderful conversation, Victoria, and I'm really excited that you resurged the podcast and that I could come in and be your guest today. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.